Guten Tag, einen sehr herzlichen Dank für die Einladung und die Möglichkeit, an dieser Konferenz teilzunehmen. Und ich freue mich sehr, hier in Mannheim sprechen zu können, eine Stadt, mit der ich eine besondere Verbindung habe. Und jetzt aber in Englisch. We have entered a process of elimination of photography. Today we have pictures, no photos, said a few days ago the well-known photographer Sebastião Salgado. Another quote, the photo is almost done because what you see on handies, this is not photo. The photograph must materialize. We must print it, see it, touch it, as before when parents made photo albums of their children. This opinion, which inexorably isolates the old patrimonial photography from digital image, would make laugh the children of today. Over the photo, while it has never been so alive, nor so as developed, as she's everywhere, produced by everyone. What is true is that photography has never experienced a greatest upheaval since its origins. What is true is that many representatives of the older generation have concluded too quickly to her disappearance at the arrival of digital, preferring to call post-photography this new era that hustles their habits. But do not confuse the hitherto known state of photography with the future of the practice. Rather than playing the game of excommunication, it is our duty to understand and describe the change that are taking place. Instead of the expression post-photography, that of smart photography reflects a new understanding of the medium, showing its magnitude and complexity. By participating to the digital world, the photograph gives the self-narration unprecedented visibility capable of competing with that of traditional media. The self-produced image is thus placed in the center of a powerful movement of reappropriation and redefinition of identities. A new step in a process that determines the history of photography since its beginning, as had explained to us Giselle Freund. To make this new step, it was necessary that the photograph goes out of the territory that was previously its own, that of a technical, industrial, and autonomous culture. The essential tool of this adaptation is the one used by the majority of our contemporaries to record, send, and show pictures, which is not a camera, the smartphone. To make the self-produced image universal did not pass through a strengthening of its specificity, but rather through a process of de-specialization, a profound contradiction with the autonomous narrative that had previously ensured its success. So I propose to look at the last advertising by Nikon of the recent model of reflex photo camera, and I show it maybe without the sound. So the principle, that's a French version, and it does use the motto, I am such and such, and the idea is, of course, that this I am comes from the internet world. And here you see, I am what I share, but I'm an icon, of course, and the problem is, of course, these two different tools, because to share an image with this camera, you have to have a smartphone. So that's, of course, this is a brand new advertising. So this revolution of the photographic culture entails many technical phases which are themselves very emblematic. Maybe the first one, coming from the initial project of the iPhone by Steve Jobs, was a handy designed to allow full use of internet resource through a new interface, kind of science fiction technology first developed for music application, that is the multitouch. And I show you. Oh. Okay, this was a TED presentation 10 years ago about multitouch technology in its very beginning. So this interface was principally used in the smartphone to allow variations of formats, variations in size, which is of course the condition for restoring the online universe on a very small screen, but also an interface that provides a new experience of photography. The variation of the image size is a key factor of what Henry Jenkins called convergence, that is, the ability for content to flow within different environments. With multitouch, this variation is not just a technical translation from one format to another within a black box for the user. It is a capacity offered to the user to move in and between the images, an adaptation of the fundamental variation of size offered by optical projection itself, so the basis of photography. We don't see much in this video, but never mind. This dematerialization of the image creates a new, simple, and very powerful way to watch and control the photo, which will quickly spread to other environments. First step. But maybe the most important integration is that of the smartphone to social networks. The role of users is decisive in this development, which was not part of its initial properties. The use of smartphone to transmit real-time images has greatly contributed to this co-adaptation. From the perspective of the history of photography, this new step shows that the production of images, which has long been the first question of the development of hardware industry, is ultimately less decisive than their showing. What good do pictures if you cannot share them, discuss them? It is this practice that explains the opportunistic investment of social media, which in turn contributes to change these environments, improving the display features, download or comment of the pictures. In this context, and I try to answer to the question of Jens Ruckart's yesterday, it should be noted that an extension of traditional photography in the direction of moving image. There is obviously still difference of perception between the long format videos on one side, seen as traditional narrative forms supported by the discourse, and photographs or short formats on the other side, including animated GIF and sequences of a few seconds, self-produced pictures that proposed another mode, narration by image. So this would be the way to separate on one side video, discourse narrative, and something which is now called photographs. This picture is called by young people a snap, but understand as a photograph, not as a video. And it is because it's self-produced, like a photograph, and also because it's used another kind of narration, this narration by image. Second part. To traditional photography has a new practice, has substituted to traditional photography, that of the connected image, built around its real-time conversational use. The exposition of self-produced images on social media has many consequences. That of increasing its visibility and value, as shown by the controversy of the selfie from 2013, but also to mix private sources and media sources in one space, the newsfeed. Within this mixity, the private image burst onto the grounds of the news. This was precisely the main symptom of the first public debate on digital image, the scandal of Abu Ghraib photographs, 2004. So these documents that did escape to their producers, which demonstrate already the power of testimony of self-produced images. First developed to share basic form of information, social networks quickly bring an alternative to the traditional press, standing in for the media offer, but also diversifying sources and opening the possibility of commentary. By becoming participatory, the relation to the news evolves toward a more autonomous management by the user, encouraging a form of demediation or distance to the media system. I have to say that filter bubbles phenomena or the extension of complotism or the violence of some exchange online are all symptoms, but extreme symptoms, of the general questioning of the traditional authorities, which extends in proportion of the autonomy of the separated groups. The consequence of demediation on social networks, particularly noticeable in the recent months with the image of police violence in France or in the United States, promote a new proximity which is no longer dependent on the pseudo-neutrality of the professional information, but which takes its efficiency through contiguity with the event, or presence within the event. It would be false to limit connected photography only to an instrumental or technical vision of the medium. Visual conversation is a learning of the relation to the image that also concerns the relation to media. And a good example of it is the little island case, because the choice by several newspapers to make the covers with the photograph of the little island in September 2015 comes from the fact that it has already gone viral on social networks before these covers. So the appropriation of this professional photograph, its commentary and allegorization by users have shown the existence of an autonomous visual culture that can identify and exploit the narration by image. Its consecration by the press reflects a form of mediatic co-construction which validates the work of visual conversation. Third point, a new narration of the self. All photographers have reacted to the arrival of smartphones saying that it was not a camera. And that's probably because this tool was not a camera, that it allowed the emergence of a new aesthetic, an aesthetic of self-made, you, characterized by technical imperfections and framing errors. This aesthetic has become the best guarantee of the authenticity of the visual record, a sign of independence reconquered by users on the photographic instrumentation, and the most obvious signature of a new narration of the self. Highlighting the narcissism of the selfie, the moral panic that welcomed it in 2013 is the strongest evidence of a new visibility of the personal image, which it had never had within amateur photography. And simultaneously the sign that demonstrates its independence to the social norm. Along with other forms of appropriation of public space, here Nuit debout in Paris, and I think of all the Occupy movement around the world, self-image is a part of a major redefinition of identities, of which we do not see yet all the effects, but which is undoubtedly the most lively and most creative part of the digital image. Again, we have to look beyond appearances. Among the photographs of Brussels attack that circulated on social networks, a picture of two women under the shock of the explosion at Zaventem Airport, quickly designated in newsrooms as, I quote, the most emotional photo from the Brussels attack, was selected as a cover by some newspapers. Testimony of a change in the public awareness, numerous protests have arisen, noting a violation of dignity of persons and the lack of consent of the subjects, especially the woman partially undressed by the impact of the explosion. Several newspapers, like Libération, decided not to publish this picture, and given the scale of reactions, the Belgian daily Le Soir, which had first chosen to publish it as its cover, changed its edition and apologized to the readers. So it seems less and less acceptable to use, without the consent of the victims, their image to feed the media narrative. This evolution of sensitivity about the image of the self is obviously related to the production of selfies and more generally with the new visibility of personal content. As shown by the long life of professional portraiture, which comes from this tradition, the invention of photography as a technique was not enough to free the common people from an administrated production of the image of the self. The will of self-control of its own image is a part of a long process of individuation which enters now in a new era with the selfie. Because the selfie is not only a way to control the image of the self is a tool to show the self as taking part to an event. We can again go back to the Abu Ghraib example, and these pictures were not selfies, strictly speaking, as they were taken by different soldiers. But what they show is not a mediated image of an event seen by a journalist, but the direct testimony of how the actors themselves would like to appear. Like here, in a less dramatic example. What the selfie shows us is a revolution in the function of visuality. Like Nicholas Mirzow explained, The main uses of images express the point of view of the power, like a painting of a battlefield. This could be called the mediated point of view, characterized by the fact that the producer of the picture has no part in the event. Like the selfie, the most of the viral images shared on social media show another point of view, the reverse point of view of someone who takes part to the event, less a picture than a testimony. This is why the visual quality of the selfie is less important. Important is that it is a direct testimony of the author of the message, in a certain way, less an image than an act and a signature, which means I am or I was here as a part of an event, a proof or a trophy rather than a visual object. To conclude, new tool of self-expression, the smartphone, through its online integration within online networks, appears as a powerful narrative tool, elliptical, playful, poetic, personal, participatory, and contextual, a tool through which the visual narrative reinvents itself every day. Can we achieve revolutions with images? I personally doubt it strongly. But images, or more precisely, what we are doing with images, can show us the hopes we have or the revolutions we wish. Photography has already brought its testimony to the radical change that takes place at the beginning of the 20th century, a change in the way we want it to appear, through the inner experience of happiness rather than through the outer attributes of social success. I think the message that appears within Snapshot, for example, is mainly a strong desire of autonomy. I thank you very much for your attention. If there are some questions or commentaries. Jens, bitte.
Do you disagree that selfies, usually called, we agree that they are not a narcissistic way of reflecting a person, but are not many selfies filled with attributes that show success, show what one was able to buy, show what one has achieved or where one has traveled? Are these not signs, different signs maybe, that play a part in the selfie, so that the person relates to something that is a sign of success, maybe a different one than it was early on. So I think the context is very important in selfie, so that what appears with the person in the picture, like we see in the GTA video covers, so that's important as well. It may be a sign of, well, different sort of success, but still it's a sign of something that someone was able to consume, to buy, or to travel to, and so on.
So that's the first question.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. I mean, if people want to show their success with images, why not? If that's what they are doing, all right, it's okay. But there are two main differences. First of all, it's self-made. And that's what the selfie is about. And that's the difference of this picture with the other ones. The other portraits here, very impressive and very good examples of the old way to narrate another image of the self. So it's self-made, self-controlled, and as you said, these are other signs. For instance, it's very clear on snapshot there that the dimension of second degree humor is a very important element of this new narration, which is quite absent from the old way. So it is this second degree is, for me, a clear sign of the appropriation by the user of this visual narration. He's doing what he wants, he or she, and the reaction. We have had the reaction of the society, so to say, as a whole, which said that's narcissistic. You shouldn't do that. Please, like said Prince Harry, please do normal photograph. Selfies are bad. So the reaction of the society shows us that these pictures are going through the norm, against the norm. They are not following the rules. That's why they are bad. And that's, as I said, that's also an answer. That's a strong sign of their autonomy. They are not only autonomous because they are self-made. They are autonomous because they break the rules. That's what we have said, the old society, to the youngest people that have begun to make selfies. And that's the answer. It is a narration by image, so it follows, these are images, and it follows the structural rules of images. So you take some attributes, but different attributes, to make your narration. And that's the way it goes since the Greeks. But here, the attributes and the way to show them are also self-chosen. And that seems to be a problem for some of our contemporaries.
I'd like to add something just what you said. Yesterday, we could really use the term you just used as well, it was the term power. And as you just said, there's a new way of distributing power in this field of making photographs and sharing them. And I absolutely understand the argument behind it, but couldn't we take another shift perspective, let's say, the Foucaultian perspective, saying that all these people celebrating themselves in the social media are objects of a new way of power. And it's the power, this new system of these social media conventions. You're right that there's a break with all the conventions, but this has established a new way of behaving. I only can tell you, this is not a proven sociological effect, but every day I have to do with young people in my school, and all of them tell me that on these networks, people lie, they demonstrate themselves as fakes, as masks, and they suffer from it. They don't believe in these images. Now, so there is a deep distrust in this way of communicating. So that is the only question which I would like to pose.
Okay, thank you. There are 2 points. People lies with pictures, those one also. It has ever been the case. There's no picture that say the truth about us, and that's not a problem of pictures. That's a problem of what Irving Goffman calls the presentation of the self. Everybody, we follow rules to present ourselves for a group or a society. So I've taken my beautiful pulley, etc. I've taken new shoes because of my presentation today. That's not a selfie or a picture of photograph problem. That's a sociological problem in how we behave in society. First point. The second point is you're right, it's a new convention, and that's also the way it goes. When rock and roll came for the first time, it was groundbreaking, and it was something totally new, and it was against the society. And of course, 20 and 30 years after, rock and roll seems for many of young people now old-fashioned, and it's only a new convention. But that it's not contradictory with the fact that we are seeing the emerging of a new convention. And that's the way it has to be analyzed, which is quite different as the narcissistic condemnation.
I go with everything you were just saying. My point was how to use this term power.
I think power is a... you get power only in intervals and margins. So I think we had just lived one of these intervals, and it doesn't take many years to become a new conventional and stereotypical use. But that is not quite the case. The use on Snapchat, for instance, are for me yet very creative, and so it's not finished. It's not yet the rock and roll of today. Rendezvous in 20 years. Oui.
Okay. Could you find out the difference between selfies produced in leisure time and in working time?
I don't have understood your question, so I'm sorry.
The difference between selfies taken during your work time and your leisure time?
Oh, there are many differences, of course, because the point is a selfie is linked to the situation you are living. First of all. Secondly, it depends strongly to whom you are sending it. And that's also a way that will change, or you can, for instance, use the same image, but it will be understood in a different way when it comes to different receivers. So there are many differences. That's the way. That's what I call narration. It's you use events, situations, allusions, context to appropriate it. A selfie is always, in all its different ways, a way to sign the event, to say, I was in this place with this person on this site, buying this good, etc., etc. But it was me, and that's what gives value to it in context. I don't know if I have answered to your question. Thank you very much.